When most people think of the Amazon, they imagine jaguars, anacondas, poison frogs, and rivers full of piranhas. And honestly, that's already terrifying enough. But the truth is, the Amazon used to be far worse. Millions of years ago, parts of western Amazonia were not the rainforest we know today. They were a colossal flooded world of swamps, lakes, slow rivers, and endless wetlands. And inside that lost Amazon lived animals so bizarre, so oversized, and so dangerous that the modern rainforest almost feels tame by comparison. We're talking about a giant turtle the size of a car, a river dolphin bigger than any freshwater dolphin alive today, a crocodilian with a face like a shovel, and one monster so huge it may have been the true king of ancient Amazonia. But before we continue, I want to ask for your help. I'm trying to reach 500 subscribers by the end of this summer, so I'd really appreciate it if you would subscribe and help me out. Now let's continue with the first animal. Number 7, Caiman brevirostris. We're starting with an animal that at first doesn't seem like the most terrifying thing in the world until you look at the teeth. This was Caiman brevirostris, a strange extinct caiman that lived in the ancient Amazon during the late Miocene. Now, if you picture a crocodilian, you probably imagine something with a long snout, sharp teeth, and a body built to grab prey and tear it apart. But this one was different. Its snout was shorter, broader, and far more powerful than you'd expect. And its back teeth weren't built for slicing flesh. They were built for crushing. That means this animal probably fed on hard-shelled prey, shellfish, armored river animals, and anything else it could crack open. So imagine a caiman that didn't just bite, it crushed. That already makes it strange, but here's the unsettling part. Even an animal like this, a specialized shell crusher with jaws built like a prehistoric nutcracker, was not the scariest crocodilian in its ecosystem. Not even close. Because in the ancient Amazon, multiple giant crocodilians lived side by side, all doing different jobs, all sharing the same flooded world. And the next one looked less like a tank and more like a reptile stretched into something almost alien. Number 6, Gryposuchus pachakamue. Next is Gryposuchus pachakamue. If Caiman brevirostris looked squat and powerful, this animal looked long, narrow, and precise. It belonged to a group of crocodilians related to gharials, meaning it had a long, slender snout built for life in the water. At a glance, it might not seem as frightening as some of the massive, broad-skulled predators coming later in this list. But that's exactly what makes it so eerie. Because Gryposuchus wasn't trying to overpower huge prey with brute force. It was built for rivers, fast snaps, fish catching, low-profile movement through the shallows. It was the kind of predator you might never even notice until it was already close. And that matters because the ancient Amazon wasn't a place where one giant reptile ruled alone. This was an ecosystem packed with different crocodilians, each with its own strategy, its own niche, and its own way of turning the water into a death trap. So instead of one obvious monster, you had a whole guild of them. One crushed shells, one hunted fish. Another, as you'll see later, may have preyed on almost anything it wanted. And if that sounds bad, the next animal proves something even stranger. Because now we're leaving reptiles for a moment and moving to a mammal that may have ended up as prey in one of the most brutal fossil stories the Amazon has ever produced. Number 5, Pseudoprepitherium. The next animal is not a crocodilian, it's a ground sloth, and not the giant Ice Age kind most people imagine. This was Pseudoprepitherium, an extinct sloth that lived in the wet, swampy world of the Proto-Amazon. Now, by itself, that might not sound too dramatic. A sloth in a prehistoric wetland. But this animal becomes unforgettable because of how we know it died. Scientists found a fossil limb bone from a mylodontid ground sloth in the Peruvian Amazon bearing dozens of tooth marks. Not scratches. Not random damage, bite marks. And when researchers studied them, The conclusion was chilling. This sloth had likely been attacked by Purussaurus, the giant caiman we'll get to later. That means this isn't just an extinct animal on a list. It's evidence of a real predator-prey interaction frozen in time. One ancient mammal, one giant reptile, one violent encounter in the wetlands of a lost Amazon, and suddenly the whole ecosystem starts to feel more real. Not just strange, not just ancient, dangerous. Because this wasn't a place where giant reptiles only hunted fish. They could drag mammals into the water too. And the next animal makes the crocodilian story even weirder. Because if you thought crocodiles only came in one basic shape, the next one will prove you very, very wrong. Number 4, Mourasuchus. If the animals so far have sounded dangerous, the next one sounds almost impossible. Meet Mourasuchus. This extinct caiman had one of the strangest skulls ever seen in a crocodilian. Its snout was extremely broad, flat, and elongated, so bizarre that the first time you see it, it barely even looks real. It looks less like a predator's face and more like someone flattened a crocodile's head into a giant scoop. So what was it doing? That's where things get interesting. Scientists think Mourasuchus may not have hunted large prey the way modern crocodiles do. Instead, it may have fed by sweeping up lots of smaller animals from the water, almost like a giant living trap for whatever was moving nearby. And that image is honestly disturbing in its own way. Because now you have to imagine an Amazon wetland with not one kind of giant crocodilian, but several. One built for crushing, one built for snapping through rivers, one built for bulk collection of prey from the water itself. That makes the ancient Amazon feel less like a forest, and more like a lost reptile experiment on a continental scale. But as strange as Mourasuchus was, the next animal is the moment this script stops feeling like a crocodilian list, and starts feeling like a true prehistoric fever dream. Because now the Amazon gives us something nobody expects. A giant river dolphin. Number 3, Pebanista, yacuruna. And this animal is one of the most fascinating extinct creatures ever found in Amazonian fossils, because it was a giant freshwater dolphin, not a marine dolphin, not a whale. A freshwater dolphin moving through the drowned landscapes of western Amazonia around 16 million years ago, and it wasn't small. Researchers estimate it reached roughly 3 to 3.5 meters in length, making it the largest freshwater dolphin currently known from the fossil record. That alone is incredible. But what makes Pebanista even stranger is that its closest living relatives are not the modern Amazon river dolphins most people know today. Its closest living relatives are found in South Asia, which means this animal represents an ancient lineage tied to a very different world. A world before the modern Amazon river system fully formed. A world of giant wetlands. A world where huge aquatic animals move through broad, shallow waters shared with giant turtles and oversized crocodilians. And that's what makes this entry so powerful. Because it shows the Amazon wasn't just home to giant reptiles, it was producing entire aquatic communities unlike anything alive now. A river dolphin this large already feels surreal, but somehow it still isn't the most visually absurd animal on the list, because the next one looks like someone designed a turtle and then decided to make it ridiculous on purpose. Number 2, Stupendemys. And yes, the name sounds dramatic. That's because it had to be. This was one of the largest freshwater turtles ever discovered. Some individuals had shells approaching 3 meters long. That is not just a big turtle. That is a turtle the size of a car. A turtle that, if you saw it in the water from a distance, might not even register as an animal at first. It would look like debris, a rock, a floating mass, until it moved. And as if the size wasn't enough, some males appear to have had horn-like projections on the front of their shells. So now imagine the scene. You're moving through ancient Amazonian wetlands. Nearby is a giant river dolphin. Somewhere else is a shovel-faced caiman. And right in front of you is a horned turtle the size of a table. But the most important detail about Stupendemys isn't just how huge it was, it's that some fossil shells preserve damage consistent with attacks from giant caimans, which means even this armored giant wasn't safe. Something in the water was still strong enough, big enough, and violent enough to attack it. And that brings us to number one, because if Stupendemys was the tank of the ancient Amazon, then the next animal was the reason the tank still wasn't enough. Number one, Purussaurus, and if there was ever a true ruler of the ancient Amazon, it may have been this. Purussaurus was a giant caiman that lived in the Miocene wetlands of South America, including the ancient Amazon system. And when I say giant, I mean giant even by prehistoric standards. This was not just a big crocodilian. This was one of the largest crocodiliform predators ever known. Massive skull, immense bite force, a body built for ambush, eyes and nostrils positioned for life in shallow water, and all the mechanical power needed to do what modern crocodilians already do so well: wait, strike, drag, and roll. That last part matters, because the death roll, one of the most horrifying attack behaviors in the modern animal world, likely existed here too. Only now, scale it up, way up. And suddenly everything else in this ecosystem starts to make sense. The bitten sloth bone, the damaged giant turtle shell, the layered crocodilian community, the feeling that the proto-Amazon wasn't just diverse, it was loaded with danger. Purussaurus may have been the apex predator that tied the whole nightmare together, not because it was flashy, not because it needs movie exaggeration, but because the science alone already makes it terrifying. A giant ambush caiman in a continental wetland full of other giant animals is already enough to make ancient Amazonia feel like one of the most extreme ecosystems Earth has ever produced. And what makes that even better, or worse, is that this wasn't some tiny local swamp. This was a massive, sprawling wetland system covering huge parts of tropical South America. So this wasn't one monster in one lake. This was a whole world where monsters made sense. So when people call the Amazon one of the wildest places on Earth, they're not wrong. But millions of years ago, it may have been even more extreme than anything alive today. A flooded world of giant turtles, giant dolphins, bizarre crocodilians, prehistoric sloths, and one massive caiman that may have ruled over all of it. And honestly, the ancient Amazon might be one of the most underrated lost worlds in all of natural history. So now I want to ask you, which of these extinct Amazon animals shocked you the most? And which one would you least want to encounter in real life? Thanks for watching, and let me know in the comments.